Alright, so I guess I'll just launch straight into this dream reflection, if that's what we're going to call it. So I have dreams every now and then, as most people do, but from time to time I have a very vivid or memorable dream, and this dream that I had earlier in the year fits into that category. It's one of those vivid, important dreams, I think, that has some meaning to it. But anyway, I'll get into it. So, just for context, at the time I was in the Philippines for a wedding. This was midway through the trip. Not sure what triggered this whole slew of dreams, but anyway, I'll get into it and then I'll do some self-analysis and we'll see what we get out of that. So, to begin the dream starts off, I am in a shopping center in like a mall. And you know how there's little kiosks at the mall, there'd be like ice cream stores or jewelry stores. This particular store was an ice cream store. So I went to the store, bought myself an ice cream cone, and who else should be there but a kid from my primary school who I hadn't seen in about 15 years. Now, at the time, I always had my thoughts that this particular person was a homosexual, not that it's relevant to the dream. Usually I don't tend to describe someone based on their sexuality, but it's important for the sake of the dream. Anyway, so in this dream, he was there. He was also eating an ice cream. And he approached me in this situation and started to hit on me in a sexual way in which I felt very uncomfortable about this whole situation. It's really bizarre that this kid would feature in the dream, not having seen him for so long. Why the ice cream factor, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, so he hit on me. I immediately felt very uncomfortable at this and basically ran away. And that was the end of that part of the dream. And then, much like a movie, it just transitioned like a quick edit into the next part of the dream. So this is part 2 of the same dream. Next thing I know, I'm on top of a mountainside, and in the distance, all I can see are just the canopies and the tops of trees. I'm standing with a group of people, and we're sort of on like the mountain edge. So if you step off, you're going to fall off and die. Behind us launches this bicycle flying contraption manned by an unknown person. I don't know who this person was. But he basically, he's pedaling along, rides off the cliff, or rides off the mountain edge, and is pedaling, and then the pedaling makes the device flap, and he flies off into the distance, sort of to the point where you can no longer see him. The group of people I'm with, not entirely sure who they are, but I'm witnessing this going, that's a pretty impressive thing to see. That was the end of that part of the dream. Again, what's the relevance of that? Not entirely sure, but we'll come back to that. So, part 3 of the dream now begins. Once again, another quick edit, much like a movie. And I find myself in a very tranquil, tropical, it's like sort of evening time, cold and misty in the woods. And there's this really, really nice sort of like fantasy style cottage just randomly here in the woods. And so I make my way into the cottage, sit down by the fire, and who should be there other than Ethan Klein, who is a YouTuber. He reacts to videos. I watch a lot of his videos, and I find him very entertaining and quite hilarious. And I basically sit down by the fire, have a really nice chat to this guy, and that's pretty much the extent of the dream. 3 very vivid particular parts, not connected in any discernible way. Some meaning I can apply to bits and pieces, but that was the dream, and I remember it very vividly. This happened months and months ago, and I can still recall every aspect of the dream. I'm not entirely sure why, because it seems like there's not much going on, you know, in terms of the deeper meaning behind it. But the first part, so with that kid from school, now I know the reason why this featured in the dream. The day prior, I was talking to my brother and a group of people, and we were having a conversation about gender roles, and how how easy it is to be a woman in the modern world and to feel uncomfortable with men hitting on you, and how men sort of don't really experience that to the same effect. To which Nathan, my brother, said one time years ago when he was out, he got hit on by a homosexual man in a very aggressive way, and he felt very uncomfortable about that, which sort of got my mind thinking, yeah, I haven't really sort of experienced that myself. And of course, that first part of the dream was that sort of thought process being manifested into that scene of meeting that kid from school, who I must have subconsciously seen on Facebook or something like that, and my mind thought, yeah, let's just bring this all together. That sort of makes sense. So that part I can pinpoint. That sort of makes sense. The second part, I got no idea. I really have no idea who's this man on this flying device? What is that sort of representing? Is that emblematic or reflective of anything going on in my life? Perhaps. I don't really know. That part's a bit of a rogue element that I don't. To this day, who knows? It could possibly mean something in the future, but at the moment, I can't really apply any meaning to that. And part 3, I guess, on a very superficial level, that's just me wanting to meet that guy. Because I wouldn't mind meeting that guy at some point and having a conversation with him. But why it's sort of, the whole sequence was bookended by that, not entirely sure. But that was essentially the dream. Again, it's a very memorable one, a very strange one, as dreams tend to be. It's one that I think about every now and then. I like to reflect on personally, but I thought it might be wise and interesting to sort of record it in this fashion, to look back at it in the future, and maybe it might hold some more value to me or meaning. Who knows? Or I might have a repeat of the dream. I tend to have sort of repeats of dreams, but in a different context. But the meaning, the base meaning, is always usually remains the same. But yeah, that was essentially my reflection upon that dream. Even talking about it now, it's interesting to sort of look back on it and, deconstruct it. Maybe get some more meaning out of it. Or perhaps you might have your own meaning to attribute to it. Who knows? But that was my 3-part dream, and I hope it was somewhat interesting for you to listen to.